America. I love the Constitution. I love the First Amendment. I want to carry and all else. I love property. And let me tell you something. If you care about your country, read Ludwig von Mises and the 6 lessons of the Austrian Economic School, motherfuckers.
From the streets of Melrose Park to the trading floor of the Merc, he's fought for every dollar he's ever earned. And now, with personal liberty and our system of capitalism under assault in America, he's here to seize back our rights from the government. With a cigar in one hand and a copy of the Declaration of Independence in the other, he's Shaun Thompson. And this is the Shaun Thompson Show.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white,
this might be the greatest.
Thought
for a while it was healthcare. Fear, obligation, and guilt. This may be the greatest scam perpetrated in the history of mankind.
At least 8 times in the past million years, it has advanced and retreated with clockwork regularity. If we are unprepared for the next advance, the result could be hunger and death on a scale unprecedented in all of history. What scientists are telling us now is that the threat of an ice age is not as remote as they once thought. During the lifetime of our...
That is Spock, Squirrel. Spock! You remember? That's from Star Trek. Ma! Star Trek is on! Vulcan. Never lie. Pointy ears. Big scientist. He's a scam artist actor, like most scientists. My next guest understands this because he is somebody who spent his life studying, learning, understanding from the seas to the sun. He holds degrees in atmospheric and ocean science, physics during 17-year tenure at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, known as NOAA. The author served as the United States government as a senior expert in space weather. He's even smarter than Spock, Squirrel. Author of the new book, Climate Change Deception, The Alarming Corruption of Science. It is out now. He is Dr. Justin Maibe. How are you, Doctor?
Great. Thanks for having me, Shaun.
It's a very interesting topic, and I say this to you because I love the idea of what our country became. The youngest, not just the richest for the nation, but the highest quality of life among the people. And it is because government was not in charge of everything, including opinion and science. But an anomaly has happened over the last 70 years. They've managed to sell this hobgoblin nonsense, and the reason is it's $4 trillion a year that goes into it, isn't it?
That's right. That's right. Everybody wants a piece of the action, and that's the real motivation behind what's going on.
Now, I understand the bulk of science was bought and skewed because of the Rockefellers and their money that they had and the way they wanted to sell that nonsense of fossil fuels. I mean, you say a lie enough, next thing you know, people will start calling it fossil fuels. I don't believe it's from fossil at all. I believe it might be either abiotic or organic. That's where the argument lies. But one thing is for certain, it comes from Mother Earth, and they knew it was everywhere, but they had to sell that it was finite. And that's what I believe all of this stems from. What do you think?
Well, my story is really about government corruption. I spent a lot of time at NOAA. I am an atmospheric scientist. I've studied climate change. I think the climate's changing for a lot of different reasons. But the big scam is, like you said, that those trillions of dollars, they want a piece of that action, and they want to control us. They want to tell us what to do. And the best way to do that is to control an agency like NOAA, which is a world premier agency for understanding the climate science. So whatever, the people at NOAA say, that's where the narrative is going to go, and that's where the control and power is going to be had.
What's fascinating is we're hanging on to this rock that's doing 1,000 miles an hour. We just recently learned, I believe it's no more than 25 years of knowledge, that the center of the Earth actually changes directions every 70 years. However, a lot of thought when it comes to weather patterns comes from this factoid, that we're doing 1,000 miles an hour. It goes from east to west. Then every 70 years, it slowly somehow reverses itself, goes from west to east. And that's why that weather almanac has been right for so many years. And the guy I watch on We Got Nothing News called WGN in Chicago, he can't get 3 hours right. What exactly is the science that a weatherman locally cannot tell you what the weather is going to be in 3 hours?
Well, you're alluding to long-term variations. The most dominant one is the El Nino-La Nina cycle, which we're dealing with right now. It's been hot because there's a strong El Nino going on. The longer-term cycles that you talked about, there's cycles that happen on the periods of hundreds of years. There's astronomical cycles, we call them Lankovich cycles. So all these things factor into what our normal kind of climate and weather patterns are. Now, the short-term weather patterns, the guy can't, predict 3 days out. That's because we use sophisticated models that we spent billions of dollars on, and there's a lot of variables and a lot of dials they tune. Those models, for the most part, are based on trial and error. We see what happens and adjust them a little bit and figure out how to fix them.
So it's really fascinating stuff that we don't know. Yet, with all your experience, are you amazed at the amount of arrogance based on the ignorance of what we do not know and how they are still claiming to be capable and understand how to control weather and why the 0.004% of greenhouse gases by their science is somehow my fault and I have to pay higher taxes? Isn't that amazing?
Well, I'm not too amazed by it because my field climate scientist is basically dominated by academic, mostly liberal people, and people with pulling the purse strings behind the scenes are the globalists that want to leverage that for their own power schemes. So nothing really surprises me when it comes to the storyline they tell and the answers they give us that we have to follow or the end of the world's going to come.
It's the climate change deception, the alarming corruption of science. And, it's fascinating to me, and I'll tell you why. I'm very suspicious. And I understood a very, very long time ago, growing up around social clubs and taverns and gamblers, there's a flaw with humanity, and that is that it's occupied by people. And I don't care whether you're a judge, a lawyer, a doctor, an Indian chief, a candlestick maker, you're ultimately a person. And people have one common flaw: their own self-interest and their own self-greed. Now, I remember the first time I was working as a bartender. I was about 14 years old, and this big fat slob was there. He was getting drunk as could be. And my buddy told me, you know what, if he gets drunk, he might tip you real well. I said, really, why would he tip me well? Well, he's a judge. And that's the kind of people that actually are in our society. So doctors, scientists, they have flaws. They have needs. They have desires. When you look at the trillions of dollars that are thrown down the rabbit hole of climate change, and there is no evidence of predictions, no result that they've ever been right. In fact, the evidence is that they've always been wrong. What do you use in your scientific brain to explain our complacency in their predictions, which have been wrong for 70 years, as they keep telling us in 2 years and 5 years and 12 years the world's going to end?
I don't know, Shaun. I'll tell you, though, you talk about our self-interest. If my house is on fire, I'm not going to call a politician and ask them to make a new rule for me. I'm going to call the fire department to come put it out. So whatever the answer is, if these guys are predicting is climate change catastrophe and, we got to do something about it, I don't want to do something that's going to theoretically make a difference in 100 years. I want our government that represents the taxpayers to do something that's going to protect our country now, harden our infrastructure, advance American innovation to deal with these problems. If there's going to be coastal flooding, put up barriers along the coast where the cities are going to get flooded. Just like in California where they have earthquakes, you make the buildings earthquake resistant. You don't pass legislation to prevent earthquakes in the future.
When you look at the models, it's been fascinating to see the predictions of ice is going to melt, seas are going to rise. When you look at the models, do you see any evidence of this?
Well, when I look at the models, my background is physics, and I think about everything under the hood. It's like I'm a car mechanic, looks at your car, and he thinks about the engine under it. So when I see the models, I see something that was developed for a purpose. It was developed for a forecasting purpose, and I see something that was tuned with dials. Not something that is taking the best physics in the universe and predicting what's going to happen, in 10 years, 20 years, 100 years from now. So I don't have real big faith in the models because I know where their flaws are and I know where they can go off the rails. And I also know that things can happen, like, we can get hit by a meteorite that can change the climate, or we can have a major volcanic eruption or a nuclear war or something. So when it comes to models, I view them as a tool. I like to use them. They have their value. I write about this in my book. But I wouldn't trust the models to tell me how to, run the country and how to spend trillions of dollars and, for some theoretical future.
It's amazing how they've been able to do this by just waving the virtue shield called science. And, you know, what's fascinating is about a decade ago, 11 years, 10 years ago, I moved down to Florida, my business, and I would go back and forth for years. And I was on both coasts, East Coast and West, but I'm South. So I practiced real estate in like Naples and Marco Island and on the West Coast. And on the East Coast, I had an office in Lauderdale and Pompano, and I would go all the way to Miami. And it was fascinating I would talk to these people, these older people. You know, there were homes there, Justin, that were 70 years old. Little homes right on the canals and on the water. And back then, they were, 70 years old. And I would say, boy, this house was built in the 50s and the 40s and the 30s. All this stuff with the storms that go in. They go, yeah, storms come in, the old timers. And it was amazing the fishermen that knew. And they're like, well, they were following patterns. And those patterns, they follow almost the same hurricanes that hit us 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 70 years ago. And I've been through 4 hurricanes, and I've never left. And I live right near the water. And I was through Ian, and to see it was amazing. And to see the water come in is humbling and terrifying and amazing. But then you know what happens, Justin? It goes back out, and people and technology that we now have, the buildings stay up, everything is fine. That's the part we should be kind of aware of. We have the technology to weather the storm. Double entendre intended, don't we?
Well, that's right. And I think that's the job of government. In our representative republic, I pay taxes. I want my government to take all possibilities into consideration and help the country get ready to weather that storm. Rather than, scheming with these globalists that send money overseas. I want the roads fixed. I want the infrastructure hardened. I want smart highways so when the hurricane hits Florida, we can evacuate the people safely and get emergency responders back in by controlling traffic lights using artificial intelligence and other, advanced technologies we have. And right now, the government's really not doing that. They're sending the money, our resources to the wrong place. And when disaster hits, they're going to blame it on climate change again. And they're not going to take responsibility for not doing what needs to be done now before the disaster arrives.
So there's this fascinating product out there, and it's called Aquafault. Did you hear this? It's like asphalt, only it's Aquafault. And what it is you buy it in a bucket. Anybody could buy it. And it's kind of like gummy, and you use it to fill holes. And the minute, you know what makes it solid? Water. So there has been an incredible advancement in technology for roads and for bridges and even homes. And when you look at the kind of money that's been sucked out of this new energy, this green energy, and the real scam, renewable energy, and the windmills and the solar, I mean, you're talking trillions of dollars. And my favorite part about these scams are, whether it's solar or windmill, they don't last more than 21 years. And you have to buy all of the material it takes to go in it. How do we change the conversation? Because, I know, and there are hundreds of thousands of scientists such as yourself that never bought this and have enough character not to be sold, not to become a prostitute of your knowledge. What's the best way to change the direction? I think what Trump has done is amazing, as it's not in the spotlight, but you and I both know we're an election theft away from it going backwards. What's the best way for you to have the impact to combat the propaganda that now generations have been brought up in believing this fraud, even though they're living through the proof it's a lie?
Well, that's a hard one, and I agree that what the president's done is amazing. And, if we can figure out how to convince the American people to appreciate what he sacrificed to serve our nation, then maybe we can start to solve that problem. When it comes to dealing with the scientists, we're in an industry where our lifeblood depends on, being in good standing in our little clique. Special interests decide where the money goes. They decide what kind of research is done. When, as a scientist, I put in a proposal or I publish, I have to say the right things, or I'm not going to get the money, or if I piss somebody off, next time that same organization is going to give me more money to do my next 3 years of research. So, it's very difficult to fix the system from inside. I really think it has to be an all-hands-on-deck effort from the American people. We have to start waking up to reality and stop buying this crap, this propaganda that's spewed over the news. and start thinking for ourselves and doing our own research and figuring out what is true and what is not true. And, as a people, we're the greatest people that's ever lived on the face of this earth. And when we band together and remain united, we can do anything.
Well, one of the other things I think that has to be done is to prosecute the corruption that you write about in this book. And when you see the corruption, it's really staggering, the lack of guardrails or any oversight that goes into this arena. And the Stacey Abrams thing, the $2 billion, you remember Stacey Abrams from Georgia. She has the love handles on her neck. She had $100 in her checking account. She got $2 billion thrown into it to buy stoves and air conditioner units for poor people. What kind of corruption were you finding, and which was the one that really you said, this is preposterous now?
Yeah, so my story is focused on a very specific type of corruption, which is the capture of a government agency. So, government agencies are created basically by Congress. The government says we need to have a certain function done, so they make an organization to do that function. The one I worked for under NOAA, the purpose was to basically steward all this climate data. For a couple hundred years, we've been collecting data, temperature, wind speeds, all things like that, and our job was to steward that. So because of the computer technology that really bloomed in the last few decades, the people inside the deep state, if you will, said, hey, we don't need to do that mission anymore. We're going to repurpose this agency. So instead of going back to Congress or closing the agency, they decided that they were going to use it for whatever they wanted to, for their own projects. And, there's a high value to that in NOAA because this allows mission creep. It allows outside influences to come in and, kind of guide the science that goes. So what I saw, and I think this applies across the federal government, but, I can't say for sure because I haven't been across the entire government. I see a feudalistic kind of system where the highest level career people, the political people come and go with every administration, but the highest level career people stay there for decades. And this is what most people call the deep state. And they're like these barons and lords that have little fiefdoms. Yes. And they bring their own people in and they populate their organizations with loyalists. And over time, they control things to such an extent that everybody's afraid of them, and they can start wheeling and dealing outside of the taxpayers' interest. And I think that this is what happens, and this is what I'd really like to see corrected, and why I wrote my book.
It's fascinating how much time you put into this, and when you're studying, and what conclusions you must come to. Now, listen, I'm just a hobbyist who I love to look at this kind of information, and I have been in awe when you see like the Atlantic and the Pacific meeting and the different colors and the idea of what we still do not know about the ocean, what we still are unaware of. And when you look at all of this, and I don't mean specifically like the oil coming out of the floor of the ocean, trillions of gallons. I'm talking about how the tides and the moon and the stars and the sun. I don't know how anybody who has any awareness in anything can come to any other conclusion of, look at what God did and how perfect it is. What do you come to when you look at it? It's just amazing that we're even on this thing doing 1,000. We're doing 1,000 miles an hour. People don't even talk about it anymore. It's amazing how it operates so perfectly, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I have unshakable faith in God, and when I look at the world, I see, just God's glory and all its amazing. I mean, I'm thankful every day for being able to experience it, and I don't have any illusions about understanding everything or even understanding a small chip off of what the universe is all about. I just try to focus in on my area of expertise and do what I can do to advance human knowledge. But yeah, I mean, definitely, I think, I've been a physicist for, 35 years, and every day passes, my belief in God becomes stronger and stronger.
It's amazing.
And to a large part, yeah.
Where's your favorite place that you've been? I'm curious, because I would assume you've been all over, but where's your favorite place you've been?
Oh, my favorite place is the Republic of Palau, because I've gone there a couple times a year for the last few years for a project I've been on. And it's beautiful. It's one of the best places for scuba diving in the world, but I'm afraid to scuba dive, so I'll just go snorkeling. And I'm usually working and don't have time. But it's a small country. I show up at the airport. The customs lady knows my name, knows where I'm going. I go into the coffee shop, and I haven't been there for a year, and the lady knows exactly what I'm going to order for breakfast. It's an amazing place. And, you know, I love it there. That's just kind of my home away from home.
Well, I can't wait to go through the book. Now, the book is out now, The Climate Change Deception, The Alarming Corruption of Science. And how long has it been out? When did you launch it?
Well, actually, it comes out in 2 weeks. So it comes out July 21st.
July 21st. So I can't wait to go through this. And I love this idea that you're putting out information, because really what you're doing is you're going against the grain. You know, I've had some good people on, good scientists and meteorologists, and, you know, it's fascinating because I remember a time when everybody would not sell their character for money. But what's fascinating is how many people did, and how few the good people are, how few attention you are given. So I love when you write books. I love when you start websites. And I know some of the guys are talking about even introducing some homeschool classes and different things of that nature. So the Climate Change Deception, I'm assuming, is going to be a fantastic success. Have you given it thought downfield as to if you're going to do a website where you're going to post the information and continue to follow the kind of money that goes into this boondoggle?
Oh, I have no idea. Right now I'm focused on my work, and I'm working probably 60 hours, 70 hours a week doing what I do. But yeah, I'm going to take it day by day and, you know, see where God sends me. And I'm going to, you know, hopefully he'll keep me on the right path, and I'll continue to do good, you know.
National Institute of Environmental Health Sciences. Does that have a website where we can keep an eye on you?
Yeah, that's where I work now. That's the branch of NIH, National Institutes for Health, where Anthony Fauci came from.
So you're a whistleblower.
Yeah. Well, I am a whistleblower, but fortunately, I'm not a whistleblower at NIH.
No.
So I'm in good standing here with my employer, and I'm real happy to be here.
Yes. Well, I'm glad you're there, and more importantly, I'm glad you wrote the book Climate Change Deception. Dr. Justin Maibe, thank you so much for making time for me. I look forward to hopefully meeting you in the future.
Thank you, Shaun. Me too.
Thank you. We'll be back with your calls and comments.
Marxists, socialists, and communists are not welcome on the Shaun Thompson Show on AM 560. The Answer.
Man, I love this place. I've been surfing here since I was a kid. Now, seeing my grandson out on the water, it means everything to me. Watching him and taking in the blue waves.